Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 84 of the Hammer Territory podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Wednesday evening, and I am joined on today's podcast, as I almost always am, by Scott Coleman. Scott, not everyone will see us, but we're on video right now. Isn't that weird?
We are. It is a little weird, Brad. For the first time, we'll see how many times we do video, but some video content on Hammer Territory tonight. And hey, the Braves did us a solid. They won a game on Wednesday to keep them in the race. We'll say, unfortunately, the three teams they are chasing in the wild card also happened to win. But hey, it's a lot better than if they lost tonight. If they would have lost to Cincinnati for what would have been a fourth loss in a row, then you really start to get fatal about the season. But overall, the Braves are still in it, only 2 games back, and hopefully the teams ahead of them will lose a couple games this weekend and the Braves can keep on winning.
That's right. And while we just alluded to this, if you are a new listener, you will maybe not know this. It's been an audio-only podcast for the duration, going back to our old place at SB Nation/Vox. We've had a YouTube channel for a while, which people have already subscribed to, so thanks for doing that. But also, we're trying out some video stuff, so be patient with us. Hopefully, we'll have some stuff up there for you, but please subscribe across the board to this podcast. In fact, we are part of the Foul Territory Network, which we should also say at the top of the show. We're on Apple, we're on Spotify, etc. Please subscribe to the podcast anywhere you find podcasts, and now again on YouTube with some video stuff occasionally. Also, we have a new show from Tuesday night, just yesterday as we're recording this, from our colleagues, Sean Coleman and Stephen Tolbert. And then Scott and I talked on Sunday. So plenty of back catalog to catch up on. As you allude to, it was a positive night for the Braves, but not a overwhelmingly positive one because of the way that the other teams fared. But look, I felt bad, legitimately bad, for the fact that Steven and Sean had to record last night because it was a bad spot. And usually it's you and I that, like, I feel like we have some bad luck Sunday nights and things like that. I wanted to just do it for them because I felt bad making them do it. But you put it perfectly. If this had been a loss, I tweeted this last night. So let's just start here for a second, actually. Did it feel to you, as it did to me, that last night was like the lowest point of the season from an optimism standpoint? Because I just said it plainly, like, this is, for me, it was the first time the entire season that I thought it was more likely than not that the Braves missed the playoffs. Is that crazy, or am I out of bounds here from last night?
No, you're not crazy. There have been some really bad moments this season.
Certainly. I mean big picture, like for the season and making the playoffs more than anything else.
Last night was the first time I, sincerely putting my analyst hat on, thought the Braves were not going to make the playoffs. And mathematically, are they in it? Yes. There's only 11 baseball games left, Brad, which is kind of crazy to think about, that this time in 11 days, we could be without Atlanta Braves baseball for 6 months. But yes, losing the 3rd game in a row last night, the way they lost it, you could just see the train wreck coming in slow motion. And again, man, we have kind of lost track on what is the quote unquote low point of the season, because there have been so many. But last night, the vibes were, for me personally, about as bad as they have been all season long. And thank God they won on Wednesday. Otherwise, it would have felt like the season was very much on life support had they not found a way to win tonight.
Yeah, especially because the Mets won and the Diamondbacks won, and it would have been 3 and all those things. So we won't relitigate that entire podcast. Shouts to our guys, Sean and Stephen, for recording through that and breaking down the game on Tuesday. But all the issues, kind of, as we'll get into in a second, flared up a little bit tonight in what became a win for the Braves on Wednesday. There was the sticky situation with 2nd and 3rd and no outs, where you should be confident that the Braves are going to score, and no one's confident anymore. They did end up scoring tonight, which was nice. And look, you alluded to it. I know Sean and Steven did last night. Part of the optimism, if you want to find it right now, is yes, there's only 10 games left, 11 days, 10 games, but they do play the Mets head-to-head, so you have some control over that matchup. The Diamondbacks, your hometown, Arizona Diamondbacks, if people don't know this, Scott is an Arizona resident, have not been playing fantastic baseball for a little while. They had this incredible hot streak midseason that we won't have to talk about in depth, but they were the best team in baseball over like a 6-week span. Like, they just didn't lose forever. But now they're kind of back to normal again. So there's some space there. And one of the reasons why the projection models, whether it be Fangraphs, et cetera, have had some optimism relatively about the Braves, because it essentially, the Padres feel like they're in at this point. They're not mathematically in, but they're in a driver's seat for sure.
Yeah.
But it's not just the Mets.
Yeah, man, credit to San Diego. They cut $90 million, $90 million in payroll from last year's team. They trade Juan Soto. They get rid of Blake Snell. I mean, they lost a lot, and they are a very good team and kind of feel like the Diamondbacks from a year ago, quite honestly.
Yeah, they're rolling. So I'm kind of putting them to the side a little bit, barring complete disaster, they're going to be in. But it's not just the Mets. And while we're focusing, I think we certainly guilty of this, we focused a lot on the Mets the last couple of weeks with good reason. They were the team that was the closest team and the team the Braves are going to play. But the Diamondbacks are also a team that the Braves could pass. That's possibly in play. But anyway, we've talked about it all the way around. We're going to get into in depth the game on Wednesday. It's a one gamer for us tonight because there was a podcast last night talking about the results. But just want to do a little bit of a vibe check at the top of the show. Certainly better than it would have been 24 hours ago with us, and better all the way around. But before we dive into the game on Wednesday, which became a 7-1 victory for the Braves, a word from our Foul Tour partners and Huel.
We get it. Mornings are nuts. No time for breakfast, but you need to get your day started right.
What if a delicious, nutritious meal could be ready in seconds? Support for Foul Territory is brought to you by Huel, the world's #1 complete nutrition brand. With over 400 million meals sold worldwide, Huel is trusted by millions of people looking to fuel their days with convenient, complete nutrition. Try it for yourself with this exclusive FT offer. 15% off with the code FOUL at Huel.com.
You know we're all about saving time, but we get hangry, like a lot. I recently fell in love with the Huel Ultimate Super Greens Powder, which is a perfect blend of 91 vitamins, minerals, and whole food sourced ingredients. I also love their complete nutrition bars, and those hot and savory pouches are fire too.
FT fam, give it a shot. Get 15% off with the code FOUL at HUEL.com. Unlock a healthier, easier way to eat with Huel. Nutritionally complete meals in minutes so you can focus on what really matters.
All right, Scott, let us dive in to the game on Wednesday. A 7-1 victory that felt a lot closer than that for the majority of the night, I have to say, over the Reds. Actually, I know you were kind of chronicling this in real time, both on Twitter and in our DM chain together. It was kind of a scary offensive start. The Braves did score 7 runs in this game, but at the outset, it was like, oh man, this is not the approach you want to see. It's not the results you want to see. And yet they scratched a run along in the early portion of the game. And as we'll get into, Schwellenbach was awesome, but it was not always smooth sailing. This was definitely a pins and needles game for the most part.
Yeah, despite scoring the 7 runs, Jacob Junis looked like a Cy Young candidate against the Braves, and that's not a surprise to anybody who's followed this team. It feels like they do pretty well against the best arms, and they can't hit some of the – Junis isn't terrible, but, I think he made it through 4 or 5 innings with like 45 pitches. And there was just no patience, no power. I think there was 1 base runner in the first couple innings. Thankfully, as the game progressed, the Braves figured it out. It looked like they were about to do their usual Atlanta Braves thing and just kind of send us off the deep end. But thank God, Gio Urshela, of all people, was tonight's hero. But it was very much more of the same in the early going until they figured it out later on.
We will go kind of blow by blow about the offense, but I wanted to stop and make sure that we highlight this because we're all guilty of this on some level, that the pitching has been reliable all year long. We've covered that. But tonight, especially Schwellenbach was probably the MVP of the game for the Braves in some respects. Your starter goes out there and throws 6 innings of 1-run ball in Cincinnati, a hitter's park by all accounts. He pitched very well. I don't want to just gloss over that. He had the one kind of hiccup a couple starts ago against Toronto, but he's been really, really good. And still technically, he only had 3 earned runs allowed in that start, even though we know he was worse than that. He was pretty bad in that start. But he has this amazing streak. He's pitching great. And I want to make sure we talked about that because it shouldn't just be assumed for a still rookie guy.
Yeah, it was business as usual for Schwelly and really just never ran into any kind of trouble. His command was strong. Was victimized by some poor defense in right field, which we should probably talk about because it has become such a theme with Jorge Soler. But yeah, most years, Spencer Schwellenbach would have a very real claim to the National League Rookie of the Year award. It's pretty stacked this season with Paul Skeens, Jackson Merrill in San Diego, Jackson Churio in Milwaukee. I mean, all of those guys are having phenomenal seasons, and I think Spencer will probably finish fourth in that voting, and that's valid. I mean, all of those players are very deserving on their own of winning the award. But for Schwellenbach, man, literally every time he has gone out there, with one exception, for 3 months now, he's given the Braves a very good chance to win every single time. And I mean, rookie or not, that is very difficult to find. And just we cannot say enough good things about what Spencer Schwellenbach has done for this team.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, and we won't give you all the stats, but this is his 19th major league start. I believe he has been charged with more than 4 earned runs exactly one time. And 4 earned runs is it's not like you're awesome, but you give the team a chance when you do that. And I believe this is also, I think it's like 14 or 15 times it's been 3 runs or less, including 10 in a row. So it's incredible. And you're right. Like, he has no chance, respectfully, to win National League Rookie of the Year, but in many years he would. And he's been that level of player since he came up, and it feels like he's been up for a long time now. He really hasn't been. It hasn't been that long. It's crazy. It's the one spot where the Braves have had a lot of uncertainty in the pitching staff, but once he came up, it stopped being uncertain. Like, remember when we did all those podcasts about that 5th starter spot, and how without Strider, it was like, man, it was really dicey for a while. It's like, oh, by the way, Schwellenbach comes up, and within like a week or two, it's like, oh, we're good. Everybody's safe.
I try not to remember the Alan Winans,
right,
the Darius Vines, I mean, there were some rough ones in there. Yeah, I mean, it's not a coincidence that once Schwellenbach settled into that 5th spot, this rotation has pretty clearly been the best in the game. Oh, yeah. Schwellenbach surpassed 150 innings this season on the whole. That's a big mark. And for a team that lost Spencer Strider so early in the year, I think we all felt that even while the big dogs at the top of the rotation were going to be good, the Braves really, really, really needed someone to step up. And thank goodness it has been Schwellenbach. Young pitchers are hard to project, but it feels like the Braves have found a real core piece here for at least the next couple of years.
Absolutely. You teased it a second ago, but the 1 run allowed by Schwellenbach, we don't know that it would have not been allowed. He did allow a hit after this, but Jorge Soler did not help. So when they traded for Jorge Soler, we did acknowledge at the time, like, it was a defensive risk, right? The bat has been up and down, but it's still played just fine with the Braves. Like, he's hit enough. But the glove, man, it's pretty rough. He turned a double into a triple, which is what we're referring to in the 6th inning, the 1 run that actually scored. Yeah, he's a DH. I mean, we know that, but he's a DH, and we're going to have a long, long, long conversation probably in October, and hopefully maybe in November, about how the Braves are going to handle Soler, Ozuna, and Ronald Acuna might have to DH a little bit next year, coming back from the knee injury. A lot of guys who probably should be DHing, and Jorge Soler is a DH. Let's just say that. I mean, that's kind of it seems simple. It seems, I'm not trying to be derogatory, because the bat plays, but man, it is rough out there. It's worse than we thought it was going to be. I'll say that.
Yeah. I mean, we did about 2 hours of trade deadline preview at the end of July. And I promise you, not even just on the podcast, but just in my, for kicks, would go on Fangraphs and look at like literally every outfielder imaginable to try to figure out who the Braves, like who's Alex Anthopoulos' guy. And through all of my research, I never once even thought about Soler, because he's not an outfielder. He hasn't been an outfielder for 3 years. So when they made the trade, it was very clearly let's hope that he drives in more runs than he allows to score. But man, I mean, the Braves do have a big decision to figure out this offseason. We will save that talk for another day, but at least in the short term, I think you just have to close your eyes and pray that the baseball does not get hit to right field, because seemingly every night, every 2 nights, every 3 nights, there is some kind of adventure in right field.
Yeah, the defense has been bad enough where I'm looking at Baseball Reference right now, not Fangraphs, but he came in tonight with an OPS well over 800 with the Braves, which is not elite, but very strong, a good hitter. And he's still been a league average player. I mean, I'm not even league average, sorry, replacement level player, because the defense has been so bad by the numbers. So anyway, relevant Fortunately, didn't matter in this instance, but it's been too many times when I think we're all holding our breath. And I do have to laugh a little bit though at just how mad the beat guys get. I love them all. They get so mad at Soler's defense. It's like the trigger for all of them. Toscano, Bowman, Dio, all of them. It's just like, guys, you can just feel it when like they leave a lot of things alone. And then if Soler makes a blunder in the outfield, it is like the end of the world on Twitter, which is very funny to me.
Yeah, maybe being there in person versus
is it worse?
watching on TV. Like, I mean, every night. I mean, obviously those guys get paid to be at the ballpark just about every night. But yeah, it has become more of an issue than maybe I was expecting or most people were expecting, to be honest.
Okay, let us dive back into the actual nuts and bolts, right? You got Ozuna homering in the 7th inning. It's 1-1. The Braves had this tiny lead that was not safe. They give it back. No problem. Marcell Ozuna, we've alluded to this a few times recently, but he had not homered since August 20th. That is a calendar month, essentially. And for a guy who had been in the legitimate Triple Crown pursuit, he no longer is because that home runs just took off and Ohtani's got 50 or whatever it's going to be. But the crazier stat for me even is that he had not had an RBI since August 27th. And RBI is not something I track closely, but that's a long time for your number one hitter all year long to not have an RBI. He still has 100 after today, but he's been pretty ordinary or probably worse than that for about a month now. And again, not picking on him. He's been awesome this year, but he broke out of it tonight, which is good to see. Home run, also a double later in the game.
Yeah.
He has to be himself. I mean, we joked about it on Sunday, right? About how he and Matt have kind of switched places. It'd be nice to have both of them being good, and also still raking, which is nice to see, but having two of those guys would be even better.
Yes, and I think you have to hope, and granted, we're getting very late into the season, but Cincinnati is a hitter's paradise. And then next up for the Braves after Thursday's game, the finale in Cincinnati, is a trip to Miami, where, I mean, famously at this point, Marcell Ozuna, not just his season, but rejuvenated his career last season. So I think with Marcell, obviously the Braves need him to hit. They need Matt Olson to hit, as he has done now for almost 2 months. He's been quite good. Michael Harris had a homer as well, which is encouraging. We talked about Soler has picked it up offensively. God knows if they get anything out of the catchers that night. And then, Ramon Laureano continues to do a nice job. But yes, the Braves absolutely need Marcell to be at his very best, as he has been for most of the season. And let's hope that the home run, which was a no-doubter, 405 feet to center field, let's hope this kind of gets him going.
Speaking of Laureano, he was within, is it fair to say inches? I would say inches of a home run in the 7th. And that, if you are a listener regularly, you will know this. Scott coined this term of America's favorite game, which is involves Charlie Morton and hit by pitches. So I've coined this America's second favorite game, and I'm saying that with heavy sarcasm because the Braves, it's not anybody's favorite game. And that is, can the Braves score a run, or at least one run, with second and third and no outs? And crediting Sean and Steven again from last night, they went over in a lot more detail, but the Braves have been comically bad at scoring runs when they should score runs in great situations for the last, not only that 3-game losing streak this week, but even before that. It's been tough all year long. And again, they're up. At least they were winning this time around. They're up by a run when this happened. It was 2-1. But second and third no outs after Laureano's near home run is a double. And right on cue, you get a couple of strikeouts from Whit Merrifield and Orlando Arcia. And man, Arcia's was tough. But any thoughts on that before we move on?
How does Orlando Arcia find himself in like the most important potential rally of the game every
He's
single
just
night?
Always up. It's every day right now. He's up, and I feel bad because I've always been like known as like the Arcia skeptic. And I think everybody's kind of joining my side now. But man, I don't know how he's always up. He's always up. It's
every
always
game.
him.
Literally, biggest moment of the game. Oh, here comes Orlando. And then he swings at 4 sliders off the plate. He slams his bat. And I mean, I get it, man. He cares. He wants to get the hit.
Oh, yeah.
But it's like the old, like the ball finds you. Like, you substitute
That's
in
right.
at shortstop, and then there's 4 line drives at you in the next 2 innings. Amazingly, no matter what the situation, seems like Orlando is in the middle of the rally or potential rally every single time. And Thank God Gio Urshela came through with that hit to center field, or else, I mean, it would have been like full on doomsday if they wouldn't have scored a run in that situation.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you this. They were winning when this happened. I say that if they had not scored, I'm convinced, and this is not rational. I'm usually very rational. I'm convinced they would have lost. I don't know why I'm convinced of that, but if they hadn't scored again, I'm convinced they would have lost the game.
Because they have. I mean, that is how many games have we watched this season, especially lately, last couple of weeks, where a chance to either blow the game open or to add on an insurance run or 2 or 3. They don't do it. And then without fail, the team finds a way to score a couple runs. And I mean, it was literally last night's game. It felt like we were trending towards another just backbreaking loss. And again, tonight, at least for one night, the Braves figured it out. And then not only that, but they continue to add on in the following innings, which is nice because it gave Marcell Ozuna the night off. Joe Jimenez still pitched, but he didn't have to throw in a 1-run game. Instead, it was, I think, a 5-run lead at that point. So those are not small things by any means. And the Braves did, to their credit, a better job tonight of taking advantage of those couple of situations.
They put the game away, and Gio Urshela shouts to him. Even with tonight, like his bat's not been very good. We've certainly marveled, and I think he's gotten a lot of credit, and duly so, for playing great defense at third base. Yeah. He still has even including tonight, a 63 WRC plus with the Braves, which is really, really bad. So he's just been okay. He's plugged the gap, and that's all he had to do, which, to his credit, as we'll come back to in a second when we talk about Ozzie Albies. But he had the biggest swing of the game. I know they were already winning, but 2 outs, no disaster. He singles. It was a great plate appearance. He worked a 3-1 count. He was actually patient in a way the Braves are not being patient recently. Had a double later on in the game. If it wasn't Schwellenbach as the MVP, it was probably Urshela, just for those 2 swings. So shouts to him. That was badly needed.
Well, and look, man, the offense, it's bad. No one's going to say differently. A third of this lineup every single night was DFA'd. Just flat out.
I mean,
Urshela?
Yeah, I mean, we could go line by line, but yeah, it is kind of funny. I don't know about you. This happened to you on social media where there's this perennial conversation right now about the Braves about whether it's like injuries or guys underperforming, when the obvious answer is both.
Yes,
like
100%.
It's obviously both. But sometimes you look at the lineup, and I know you've done this and shared it on Twitter, and you look at the lineup, and it's like, how did we get here with this lineup? Like, you get past the top 4 or 5, and it's like a total wasteland. It's not anybody's fault. It's just the way it is. It's just brutal. You got all these guys who shouldn't be starting every day. They're starting every day, and Urshela's one of them. And again, honestly, if you guaranteed me what he would give the Braves when he stepped into that role, thrust in there with off the scrap heap, I would have taken it, and the Braves would have too. I'm very sure. Just catch the ball. Don't embarrass yourself. It's fine, and he has. But it is very funny. You get down to like 6, 7, 8, 9, and it's just a wasteland every day.
Yeah, it looks like a hangover lineup after they would have clinched. I mean, seriously. It's been, I mean, you're right. To answer what we were talking about a minute ago, it is some kind of mix of crushing injuries, wild underperformance and bad approach, and then just some bad luck too. I mean, it is all three. You're right. Combination of those three. And I know you were tweeting about it yesterday, how bad the Braves have been in high leverage situations, like unbelievably bad as a team, worst in baseball.
I was gonna say, if you missed this, they're actually the White Sox are worse. They're worse than the National League.
Oh,
but the White Sox are basically a AAA team. Yeah. So they're functionally, if you're the White Sox, they're 30th in everything this year, the White Sox. But if you missed this, Fangraphs has this high leverage calculation, which is I won't get into the whole formula, but it makes total sense. It's high leverage, is what it is. The Braves last year were number 1 in all of baseball. They had a 139 WRC plus in high leverage. That is incredibly good. And obviously they had a historic offense last year. Number 1 in baseball. This year, granted, different personnel, all that stuff, they are literally functionally last to your 29th or 30th if you want to take the White Sox out. It's incredible. So even as bad as the personnel has been for the Braves, as far as who's been available, you shouldn't be last in that category. You shouldn't be. There are teams that have not been trying for several weeks and months now. That have been, but the Marlins have been awful for months and months. Just picking one team out of a hat, and they're ahead of the Braves in that metric. It's like
Yeah.
Anyway, they did it today.
Yeah. In our wildest, most pessimistic dreams 6 months ago, we could have never come up with this. But here they are, 10 games to go. They have a chance by some miracle. They have a chance.
By the pitching staff is the reason why they have a chance.
That's true.
They by having the arguably best pitching staff in baseball this year, and I hope I don't have to do this. We've alluded to the show that we're going to do in October if they don't make the playoffs. I will have a stat sheet as long as the document that we usually have, just about how good the pitching staff has been and how crazy it might be to have that good of pitching and not make the playoffs with a team that was supposed to be offense first. That little caveat. Like the Mariners are the Mariners, right? The Mariners are this team that's built on pitching and pitching alone, and we understand their bats are not going to be very good. The Braves are not built that way. It's supposed to be an offense first team that has suddenly been pitching first all year long.
Well, and I mean, again, we'll probably have to do the show regardless because we're 12-month operation. But
that's right.
I mean, this is an organization that was running out 3 Hall of Famers in the rotation for a decade. This pitching staff has to compare at least somewhat to those famous teams in the 90s and early thousands. And again, that's a deep dive. Maybe we'll do. Hopefully it's not in like 2 weeks. Hopefully it's in a month and a half. But yeah, just a tip of the cap to the pitching staff. And again, Schwellenbach tonight was really, really good.
Shouts to Schwelly. But yeah, 7-1 victory. We can kind of leave it there. Michael Harris did homer. We should at least note that too. 2 days in a row. I still don't love him hitting leadoff, but there are no good options, as we've covered many times. And he homered again, which is good to see. Anything else you want to add on the game before we kind of preview Thursday, which is an early start, by the way, and get out of here on a shortened edition because of the fact that the Braves play a game in Czech's notes 15 hours as we're recording this podcast?
Yeah. The Braves, anecdotally, I didn't look this up, but anecdotally, it feels like the Braves have been pretty bad in getaway day, but they have Chris Sale on the mound, and, man, they need to find a way to win on Thursday if they're going to find themselves in the playoffs.
Yeah, this is not a getaway day stat, but they are only 27-25 in day games, and they are 10 games over 500 in night games. So they've been better at night than during the day. Yeah. It's probably random on some level, but there you have it. Speaking of not random stats, I should say, I think I said this on Sunday's show too, but the Braves are 21-7 with Chris Sale on the mound, and they are sub 500 without Chris Sale on the mound. He's on the mound on Thursday. So some confidence inherent in the best pitcher in baseball pitching for you at 110 on Thursday.
Yeah, man, let's hope Chris brings it. We talked about this on the Sunday show, but if the Braves need Chris Sale to bank 3 more starts, he can do it on regular rest the rest of the way.
And by the way, they're probably going to need it, Scott. I got that the situation is worse now than it was on Sunday for the Braves. They're probably going to have to. The chances of them clinching before the last day of the season are not impossible, but it is less likely, let's say, after 3 straight losses.
Probably needs a sweep of the Mets is the only world.
Yeah, to be able to clinch by then, it's probably right.
Yeah. I mean, now look, the vibes, especially last night, were atrocious. Tonight, a little better. The Braves won, although everybody else did. But hey, now the Mets have 4 games against the Phillies, whereas the Braves have 1 more against the Reds and 3 against the Marlins. Then both teams are off on Monday, and then comes the biggest series of the season for both the Braves and the Mets, Tuesday through Thursday. If you're the Braves, and tell me what you think about this, Brad, if you're the Braves, I feel like you have to be, well, you don't have to be, but I think you really want to be no worse than 1 game behind New York when that series starts.
Yeah, I think realistically, you probably obviously want to sweep the next 4 games. We're talking with 4 games left this week before the Mets. You got to go 3-1. I mean, that's just what it is. You got to go 3-1. 4-0 would be better, of course, but given the competition, given that the hardest game on the slate is the Reds game because the Marlins are worse than the Reds, and Sales pitching in the Reds game, which is kind of the way you want to set it up. So going 3-1, and you hope that the Phillies help you. They're still having to play. They're going to clinch a playoff spot, like probably today. Was it today or tomorrow? One of those two. They're going to clinch a playoff spot, but not the division title just yet. They're going to try. I mean, I think maybe you get 1 hangover day this weekend from the Phillies, but it's 4 games. They're going to try, and at least 3 of them. Hopefully they don't get killed. It's like, hey, please, Phillies, don't at least split the series, do something, just help the Braves out a little bit over the weekend. And then But look, tonight it's tough that obviously you wish the Diamondbacks and or the Mets would have lost, but you just got to go win games. And I know that's cliche, and I'm sure Snit, I didn't see Snit's post game tonight, but I'm sure he's just like, we got to take care of us. And that is true. They just got to win games. And okay, let's just do this in a vacuum, right? They have 10 games left, Scott. How many do they need to win to get in the playoffs? Take a guess.
I mean,
factoring in the Mets series too, which
right. I think, if they go 8-2, I would be surprised if they did not make it.
I mean, yeah. The only way they might not if they go 8-2 is if the two losses are to the Mets. That'd be the only way I could see that happening. Would be, but even you're right. I think 8-2 gets you in. 7-3, you're probably likely to get in unless you lose the Mets series.
Yeah, and an important note: so baseball does not do the game 163 anymore.
Yep.
It is head to head, and currently the Braves and Mets are tied 5-5.
Of course they are.
So it kind of feels to me, this is not a hot take or a bold take, but to me, it feels like whoever wins the series next week in Atlanta is going to the playoffs. Mathematically,
yeah. I'm doing it too. The Diamondbacks are still in this too. Like the only reason why it's the Mets and they're a rival, but the Braves just don't play the Diamondbacks, so it's not that head to head. But the D-backs, the Braves actually have the tiebreaker over them. I believe it's 5-2 in favor of Atlanta. So that might come into play as well, which is helpful to have that in your back pocket. You got to win the Mets series. We kind of understand that. But there are some factors on the margins which favor the Braves, which is part of why I've been trying to tell people for 2 weeks now, like why some of the projections still like the Braves more than it might seem like they should, is that they have tiebreakers, they have schedule advantages, all these things at the end. And does it matter? Maybe not. But you got to win games, and I think we said it. But they got to go to it's Miami this weekend, and Miami is not a team that's very good. You got to win these games, and famously, and we won't go all over the numbers, but the Braves have been pretty bad against bad teams this year, which is unfortunate. Yeah. You still rather have a bad team in a vacuum. I get why you would say the other side of that now, because the Braves have been so bad relatively against the likes of the White Sox and the Reds, who they finally beat tonight for the first time. But you still want to have bad teams. Just rationally.
Well, and it sets up about as well as you can possibly ask for. Cincinnati for 1, Miami for 3. The Mets play the Phillies, the Phillies for 4. And the Diamondbacks now play the Milwaukee Brewers for 4 games in Milwaukee. Now, the Brewers did clinch the division tonight, but if you go look at the standings, there's basically a 3-way race between the 3 division winners, presumably Philadelphia, Milwaukee, and Los Angeles, although the Padres are not dead in the West. It's those 3 teams, only 2 of them get the first round bye and the break. And I know there's this whole conversation about rest versus rust and all that.
Everyone wants the bye. I promise you they all want the bye.
Guess what? Teams who get the first round bye have a 100% advance rate to the NLDS. Teams that don't get the bye do not have a 100% advance rate, no matter how shitty the Braves have been in that series the last 2 years. So yes, Milwaukee may not go like all the way out. Maybe the Phillies clinch one day this weekend. They may not go all the way out, but those are still 2 really good teams, and they can absolutely beat New York and or Arizona.
Yeah, that's absolutely the case. And we'll keep an eye on this as well. We'll let Sean and Steven talk about this tomorrow. I think it's the plan for them to record a podcast either tomorrow or Friday. But Ozzie Albies is supposed to come back on Friday in Miami, and there was some talk today about what they might do. Obviously, when he is back, he's going to play. They're not going to not play him and bring him back. That's not going to happen. He's batting right-handed only. You and I were speculating about this offline. There was a thought for a minute that Whit Merrifield might go to the outfield. I never understood that in any way, shape, or form, beyond the fact that he has a broken foot, which, by the way, you can't just gloss over that. He has a broken foot. Respect to Gio Urshela, you don't take out Laureano to leave Urshela at third base, let's just say. Yeah. And Witt's an infielder and all this. So we'll see what they do. Again, it's probably a more of a preview topic for tomorrow's show with Steven and Sean. But that's a decision they have to make. Do you have a thought before we sign off here about that? What you would do? Presuming Ozzie's going to play on Friday.
I'm going to guess that man, Whit Merrifield has had an interesting time with the Braves. He
Yes.
he was red hot for a while, but man, even after and with the broken foot, Whit is just not hitting at all. I think the Braves like him. I think he does an okay job getting on base when he's going right. He has a little bit of speed, although with the broken foot, I'm not sure. I would guess that the Braves will keep Urshela at third base for the defense because he's been there for, a month now since they've lost Riley, and have Ozzie at second base and just kind of see how it goes. I don't know. I mean, man, at least thinking ahead, Miami has a couple of left-handed starters in the rotation, or at least they did. I don't know if they've shut anybody down, but Miami has some lefties. New York has at least 2 lefty starters who they can go to. And that's huge for Ozzie Albies because not only does he crush left-handed pitching, but it sounds like his swing is much more comfortable from the right side. But the real question, for me at least, is what does Ozzie look like against right-handed pitching? And we'll see just how many. I mean, it might end up being like 10 at-bats from his return to the end of the season just based on how the pitching lines up.
Yeah, and like I said, he has cachet, and you can debate whether he should or not. He's going to play. I don't think there's a world where they're not going to play Ozzie if he is available to play health-wise. And to your point about Whit, I know he came back and had a couple, maybe 1 or 2 good games post-broken foot. I believe he is 0 for his last 14 in the last 4 games. So an ill-timed swoon, including a bad strikeout tonight. So we'll see. Again, follow up on that on the next show with Steven and Sean. But a decision that has to be made. I presume it'll be Ozzie when Ozzie's available, which means only 2 of the Merrifield, Urshela, Laureano's been mostly the left fielder. Some Kelenic, of course, in there. Only one of those guys is going to stick because Merrifield's either going to play left or third or not at all. We'll see. All right, Scott. That's a video podcast. For those of you watching on YouTube, God bless you for wanting to see our faces. I don't know why you would, but here we are. I appreciate you being here. Please tell folks where they can find all of your lovely musings about the Braves, Scott.
Yeah, that's right, man. Twitter is a dark place these days. But yes, thanks to everybody. If you don't already, please if you're watching on YouTube, please hit the follow button, hit the little bell. You'll get notified whenever shows go live. And as always, a big thank you to our podcast listeners. You all are the real heroes for sticking with us, even during this very, very frustrating Braves season. But we'll have plenty of shows really throughout the rest of the regular season and playoffs. So again, you have our sincere gratitude, and let's hope, Brad, you and I are set to talk next on Sunday. Let's hope the Braves have racked up 3, if not 4 wins between now and then.
It would be nice. And yes, thank you to everyone for listening to the podcast. We are part of Foul Territory. One little hack that I will share, I don't know if I'm supposed to or not. It is better, all things equal, if you subscribe and download on the audio side than the video side right now. But the best thing you could possibly do is to do both. Even if you are an audio listener, and look, candidly, I am an audio listener of podcasts. I don't watch podcasts on YouTube. But the ones that I do listen to on a regular basis, I have subscribed to on YouTube. So that I've subscribed there, you get a little bit of an impression, all those things. So do that. That's the best way to support the show, is to download, subscribe on multiple platforms. We very much appreciate it. Ratings and reviews, appreciate it as well. Follow us across social media at Hammer Territory. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. One day we'll be on TikTok, but Scott and I are too old to navigate TikTok.
Yeah.
So
we got to get we need an intern if we're going to.
We're going to need a college kid to help us with TikTok, because I am very washed at this point in time. But anyway, thank you to Scott for being here as always. Thanks to you for listening. Stay tuned. We'll have more from Sean and Stephen later on this week. Scott and I will be back on Sunday, and we'll see you all next time.